So today we have the Matt from Arbitrum and Lumi from ZK Sync and Nash from Rocket and Osman from Polygon. So we will discuss the ROS and also scaling for Ethereum. I'm Louis from 7x Ventures. I think the first question to all of the panelists will be, can you help to introduce yourself and the project we are working at?
Hello? Oh. Okay. Hey guys, I'm Matt. I run the product team at Off-Chain Labs. We're focused on scaling Ethereum, but also just making blockchains more accessible to everyone generally. So that's through obviously optimistic rollup solutions like Arbitrum One, antitrust or alternate data availability committee solutions like Arbitrum Nova, and kind of a newer path for launching your own chain, Orbit, and then also kind of a separate WASM VM operating alongside the EVM in Arbitrum chains, which we're calling Stylus.
Hi, my name's Daniel Lumi. I'm the senior product manager in charge of ZK Stack at ZK Sync. We are also focused on scaling blockchain. We just sprinkle a little bit of ZK in it. ZK Stack is our modular framework for anyone to deploy their own chains with actually trustless, trust minimized bridge, as well as interoperability. And you need some ZK magic for that bit.
Hi, my name is Nash. I'm a research engineer at Celestial Labs and a contributor to Rollkit. What is Rollkit? Rollkit is a modular framework to build sovereign rollups. You can choose any execution layer, any DA layer, and any shared sequencer, and keep sovereignty over your chain without underlying infrastructure. So any combination could be working, for example, using Celestia or Avail as a DA layer, then using Astria as a shared sequencer, and for example, an EVM chain or Cosmosm chain as the execution environment. And the Rollkit node in the middle communicating with all the other rollup nodes to basically follow the canonical chain and decide on the fork choice rule.
Hey guys, this is Osman. I'm at Polygon Labs leading infrastructure partnerships, probably less of an engineer than other folks in the panel, but working very much on our Polygon CDK, which is our app chain effort, and trying to get as many infrastructure providers as possible to adopt the stack and make the developer experience of building Polygon CDK-based chains much better, and Outlayer is one of the teams that we're closely collaborating with.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the first question will be quite opinionated. So I think everyone here already hearing about OP rollup and ZK rollup for a long time, for most two to 3 years. And then currently, we still want to understand what's current progress of the scaling Ethereum. If we rate from 1 to 10, and how do you guys rate what current status? And then, also can you elaborate more how your project, your research, collaborate, contribute to the scaling for the Ethereum? Yeah, Matt.
Sure. So this is rate how far we've come in terms of scaling Ethereum.
Yeah,
from 1 to
overall.
10?
Yeah, overall.
And then what are we doing to help with that?
Yeah.
I think we're at a 3 right now. I mean, if you look at general usage on blockchains, right, there's a lot of speculative trading and interesting transactions happening, but generally compared to consumer applications, we're getting destroyed, which is fine because that's how you build technology. Yeah. I think the nice thing is the reason why we're at a 3 is because we have solutions available today that significantly reduce transaction costs while maintaining security primitives that you're used to, like optimistic rollups and ZK rollups that are coming out. But we still have a long way to go. I think obviously what we're doing is kind of at Off-Chain Labs, we're focused on kind of continuing to increase the efficiency of the execution layer. Right now, we've got interactive fraud proofs. There are multiple chains in deployment. There's a lot of chains in testnet now that are exploring kind of launching their own execution environment. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done to continue to make the state transition functions and the VMs that you're working with cheaper and cheaper and more accessible. And then obviously, I think yesterday I was at some account abstraction event. There's a lot that needs to be done at the kind of UX level for users to make it actually easy to use blockchain. So obviously there's cost at the infrastructure level, and there's also ease of use for users.
Yeah, I mean, what are we in 1997 now? As far as internet, no. I mean, the reality is it's funny. People give layer twos. and I say should give them shit for focusing on infrastructure. The reality though is like, if we had any application with even close to usage of like Instagram, it would all crash and burn, right? Like blockchain doesn't scale, and we tried to fix it, including Solana. So we tried to fix this with execution sharding in Ethereum originally, right? The idea was let's split Ethereum into 64 different shards. The problem is each of those shards would have 1/64th of the level of security of all of Ethereum, right? And then there's no real good concrete plans on how to do interoperability between those shards. This is essentially execution sharding 2.0, right? Or at least like with the fractal stack idea. The idea is now every single ZK stack chain or CDK chain or whatever chain that deploys is another shard on this network. And then we can use ZK for the interoperability. So essentially we're figuring out how to sort of dynamically scale Ethereum to the level that we could actually have consumer level applications, right? So it's going to take us a bit of time, and the UX is super important. This is like why we're investing so heavily in account abstraction, signing with trusted elements, and like from the interoperability point of view, there's a lot we can do to make sure that you don't even have to think of what shard you're on or what the stack chain you're on. You can just use an application. And then there's future research that is very exciting that I don't want to, like, I don't. The thing I like about ZK Sync is we don't really market shit that is not out yet or not heavily been developed. So stay tuned. We have really exciting things coming. And the hope of this is that we can get blockchain to the point that your grandma can use it. Well, your grandma might not be able to shoot. My grandma still doesn't know how to use the internet. But your girlfriend or your boyfriend that's not technical could use blockchain without even having to think of the underlying layer.
Yeah, if we want to achieve that, I think one of the scaling bottlenecks will be the DA throughput. I think Ethereum is going to the right direction with proto-dank sharding, but the scaling will come first only after dank sharding. And I think rollup frameworks contribute to that in a sense that they will put it, I guess, more incentive, more pressure to increase the velocity of development. Because it will be much, much easier to develop a new rollup. And how we at Rollkit contribute to that is by trying to standardize interfaces, right? There are a lot of blockchains now possibly communicating with each other. You have DA layers or shit sequencers, and all of those like frameworks communicating and interacting with each other will be a hassle to develop one-on-one solutions. And this will just have an exponential cost and too many permutations. Like we don't have that many engineers. So we got to figure out some standard interfaces to make that interoperable.
The original question was from 1 to 10, how far we are in scaling.
You want to name a number? I don't.
Actually, this is probably the last time we'll agree, Matt, but when I was coming here, I was thinking like, okay, what number I would give. I gave it 3 as well. Okay. But I was thinking like 2021, 1, 2022, 2, 2023.
Then I'll say 4 just so ZK Stack is one step further.
Sure. But yeah, I think it's still quite early and less of a technical perspective from my side. You know, with all the rollup as a solution, rollup as a service providers, what I'm seeing and what our team, what our Polygon Labs business team is seeing is that enterprises, companies, Web3 native startups that are interested in the space now have a much easier way of testing their use cases, testing their projects and things like that. So I think from a scaling perspective, experiments are being scaled right now. There are many more experiments that are going to happen, I think, in the next year. None of these, I won't say none of these, but majority of these will not be like mainstream adoption types things, but still from an experimentation perspective of real use cases, I think these rollup frameworks are gonna simplify that process much more and help the scaling of Ethereum from a business perspective.
I mean, people forget that 10, 15 years ago, you still kind of had to spin up. If you had any serious website, you had to spin up your own servers in your closet or at your office. There weren't really, like, CDNs were not great. Like you had to do everything manually. these days you manage WordPress hosting and you spin up a website and you can actually focus on the thing that you're good at, right? Or you want to do your business use case rather than focusing on the infrastructure. And that's kind of where we're trying to get to.
Yeah, as we all like so only rate 3 or 4, like for the current role of scaling Ethereum situation. So I would like to ask, what challenges do you foresee right now for the adoption? Probably guess we can start from Polygon, from Osman from Polygon first. Yeah.
From an adoption perspective, I think one big aspect is, again, I'm going to give a business perspective. I think like technical complexity is an important factor. I think you were thinking of 2 years ago. You were thinking of launching a simple dApp on a general purpose blockchain, and now all of a sudden you're thinking about launching your own chain, which brings in different different way of thinking, different considerations, and all that. So I think that's one of the roadblocks. Like all of a sudden you're starting to think about, okay, how am I gonna manage this whole chain myself, or like we don't have the skill set for something like this. So I think that's one there. I think many, but I'll just keep it short. I'll just say complexities of managing your own chain is a roadblock.
Yeah, and I believe the other part would probably be the infrastructure side, where I, as a developer, now have to manage infrastructure, and now I want to use different kind of software solutions, but the combination is very isolated, right? Different rollup stacks have different kind of deployment procedures. Different rollup stacks have different kind of interactions with the DA layer, with shared sequencers, and without standardization, you will probably have like good solutions per rollup framework, but not much interactivity throughout the ecosystem. And you have to think about, if you're now being not held hostage, but coupled into a solution that it's very difficult to get out of. So you can think about like the slow MEV. There was a great talk by Chris Goes at Research Day in New York that goes deep into that, where like solutions can now extract MEV just by increasing the cost because it's so difficult to move to a different solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think like all of what you guys said is true. Like for Stack specifically, like ZK Stack, the technology, like we have this great division of, we're a programming heavy company. Like it's all tech first. We're extremely focused on that. But one of the things that angle lets us sort of do is we can also make the UX really easy, right? So you don't have to have different frameworks, different tools for deploying your chain. You can just like out-of-box solution. You choose whether you want eigenlayer, whether you want like Validium eigenlayer. Do you want volition? So you can have both. You can have Validium and normal roll-up transactions on the same chain. You can have other things that we're announcing hopefully soon. And you can just sort of click and choose, you deploy it, you run it up, and now you can focus on your application. And then we can remove some of the UX complexity from both the developers as well as the users by providing certain frameworks and certain tools to make it easy. And this is sort of like, this should be the focus of every sort of modular framework, to make it as easy as possible, where you don't have to worry about at least the setup process. Of course, the like lock-in, this is true with any technology stack you build on any framework in programming. You're like, it's not super easy to move. But if we do this right, then hopefully that's not too hard either, because we want people to stay on us, not because they're locked in, but because they have the best experience and they can focus on their product market fit.
I think there's 3 areas that I would focus on if I had to give advice to some random person that was working in this space. So the first, I think deploying your own chain, just like RPCs, is going to become such an easy, frictionless, commoditized thing that I'm not actually worried about the challenge there. The more important thing is actually enabling developers to have a very good developer experience on chain. if you're looking at Solidity or you're looking at kind of what the Risk Zero folks were talking about, you have to have this totally different environment. If you want to use kind of Starknet, you have to learn an entirely new language. So our bet with example Stylus is to kind of bring the existing devs that know other languages, kind of arbitrarily that compile to WASM, over into the existing ecosystem, being able to interoperate with the EVM. So I think getting that right is very, very difficult. And anything that teams can do to make it easier for people to just port their business logic that already exists into whatever the framework they need to put it on chain where the liquidity is or where the users they want to reach are, is really important. I don't know what the exact solve for that is, but that's going to be one important thing. Probably the next two things I think are actually much more important. So the second one I would say for adoption of blockchains generally is ossification.
Just in general or for stacks? Okay.
I think generally, right?
things.
Yeah, many things. Yeah, sorry. I think ossification around the value of decentralization is going to be really important. In Ethereum, I think core devs, us, and a lot of the teams here probably agree on the value. Most users don't care or know. I think a lot of people don't even understand that if you're using a rollup like Arbitrum 1, you have security rooted in Ethereum, and if you're using other rollups, you don't. It's not something that users think about when they're paying someone, right? And so as nations start to get more involved in not only regulating, but also kind of deploying tokenized assets on chains, a kind of consensus at a global level that is not just developers, they're actually decision makers at the institutional level, understanding kind of where that trade-off they want to make around decentralization is. Because eventually, blockchains don't have a military to enforce their rules. So it is important to understand kind of how other people are thinking about this.
Vitalik and armor.
Yeah. So I think the value of decentralization is going to be important. The last thing I think is related to this is accurately pricing storage. So on Ethereum, there's obviously a pricing mechanism. On alternative data availability solutions like Celestia, there's a separate pricing mechanism. If you're using a committee, there's also kind of your own. It's subsidized right now. But you can drive these costs to zero if you're running the chain yourself. But figuring out kind of where that perfect price point is for, okay, this is storage that's going to live on chain, but the value that users are getting on average is some amount of money, and making sure that the cost for storage generally is below that value that users are getting, say with kind of the emergence of interest-bearing stablecoins. I think then we're going to see kind of mass adoption. Once we don't have to worry about, well, is what I'm paying actually worth it? At an aggregate level, we'll start to see mass adoption.
Can I just address your second point? Because I agree, like as a programmer and a security maxi, and I do want decentralization, there's a reason I don't work on other layers, right? It's not compromises that I think are very smart or scalable for that matter. Our job as engineers in this space is to build it to the point that users don't have to choose, right? Smart money cares. JP Morgan cares about what the level of security of the blockchain is because they have significant money, right? We can build it in a way in L2 ecosystems, and we still need some time to develop like really the worst case scenario, like circuit breakers. But like we can build it in a way where users have cheap transaction fees, they have quote unquote fast blockchain, and they have maximal decentralization, they have security, and this way no one has to choose. Because we can't really, like I was hosting a privacy event, right? And after my speech, we had like a round discussion. And after this, I asked them, someone asked me, how do we get people to adopt privacy? I'm like, okay, how many of you use Instagram? Everyone puts up their hand. How many of you use Telegram for crypto work? Not encrypted, by the way, everybody.
Yeah.
How many of you run your own
Sorry,
node?
we need to mind of time. We have 3 more questions. Sorry.
Fair. The point is, we can't rely on people choosing it. We have to make the decision in a way that they get the best of everything without deciding it.
Yeah. I think so. We are all talking about security and scaling. And for next question, a lot of people are talking about OP rollup and ZK rollup. Probably you guys already answered so many times about also benefits of OP rollup and ZK rollup. So I won't skip that question. So I want to ask more about because there are more some latest trends right now. For example, Arbitrum is building Stylus, can run some ZKD app on top of that, because of power of the computing for both WASM and also the EVM. For example, we have ZK OP hybrid rollup, the Optimism trying to do the ZK fraud proof. or for example with Polygon and ZK Sync, you guys are building like those kind of the hyperlayer to do the proof aggregation layer for all the L3s on top of that. So I probably will ask more about what kind of pros and cons for each kind of the new approach you guys are trying to do, and then probably give the developers builder here the new update for the newer research, newer projects you guys are working on.
Okay, so the question is, don't talk about the differences between optimistic rollups and ZK rollups, but in terms of our projects and what we're offering, what is the differentiator?
It's more like for the stylus, for example.
Sure.
Like what's the pros and cons for stylus for current builders?
Right.
Yeah.
So Stylus is pretty awesome. If you have any questions about it, Austin, who is kind of our product manager on Stylus, is in the audience. You can ask him about this after. I think the biggest unlock there's two big unlocks for Stylus. One, you can use languages that you couldn't use in the EVM before to directly call EVM contracts on chains with existing users and liquidity. This is huge. There's there was an active report published yesterday. There's 20-something thousand Solidity developers. Great. There's 30 million developers in the world. So let's get them on our chains. That's one big unlock. The other thing is generally because of developments in compilers over the years with Rust, C, C++, Go, all of those teams doing great work. There's actually efficiency benefits when you use those native compilers down to WASM. So actually running the instructions on chain is much, much cheaper than Solidity. Not all the time, but in certain instances. So that's one big benefit. I think generally, though, if you're using Arbitrum chains, you want to launch your own L3, you can do whatever you want with the tech, which is, flexibility is key.
Okay, understand. And same for the Lumi from ZK Sync. Tell us more about the new hyperchain that ZK Sync is building. Yeah.
So, okay, for Hyperchain, we have a lot of value adds. Also, just to address, Stylus is great, by the way. It really is.
Nice.
No, and I'm an engineer. I'm not gonna lie about that. That's a cool program. We made some different decisions at ZK Sync, right? We optimized for performance. It does not entirely perfect equivalence, which does have trade-offs, but the thing that lets us do it, the type 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm not even gonna name the types. The point is, essentially, if you optimize for performance, you can have both performance and you can come closer to equivalence and have that running at the same time, right? And essentially, this way, again, we need to scale blockchain. As much as we can pretend 5 to 15 TPS is not gonna get you anywhere, right? So we optimize for performance. We're building up the DevX in a way that you don't notice much of a difference, right? And that's part of that's the core value that we provide. And we're building a lot of I don't like to, again, we're engineering first. We're not gonna market things that aren't out, WASM, sorry, ZK WASM. That's really far off, mate. So you'll start seeing, I promise you in the next 3 to 6 months, it'll start coming more and more clear, the vision of why we went this path of optimizing for performance and how that affects every chain's ability to run. We really believe in a decentralized community that can scale. I know we all do, but it's really the performance that is the underlying key cut point for us. And then we can add things that help with developer experience. I want to say so much that I'm not allowed to say right now.
I understand.
Come talk to our team.
Yeah, I think for Nash, my question will be what's the pros and cons for Rollkit? Because everyone talking about the OP stack. As a Rollkit is also a Rollup framework, what do you think the pros and cons comparing with the OP stack, comparing with the Outlayer and other guys? Yeah.
So I would say that at Rollkit, what we are prioritizing is credible neutrality and optionality of the developer choosing their own infrastructure stack. Because of the DA interface, we were able to integrate Celestia, Avail, and Bitcoin. We were the first to implement Bitcoin as a DA layer back in February. And then there was this whole hype around, okay, let's build L2s on Bitcoin. And there's I guess a new narrative for Bitcoin happening now. And the idea here is that with more DA layers coming out, they can still implement the same interface and everything will still work out of the box. And this also goes for shared sequencers in the future, where a DA layer can also be a shared sequencer, which is called base sequencing, and using also the ABCI interface from Cosmos, where you can use and build app-specific chains. And just any Cosmos SDK native chain can then port, and instead of paying high inflation for the avail data set, they can delegate consensus and data availability and focus on capturing the user experience and the scalability through a DA layer.
Okay, great, understand. I think for Polygon, the exciting thing is Polygon 2.0, the ZKEM framework, Rollup framework. Like Osman, can you share more about that? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, we have our ZKUM engineers in the audience as well. So more questions to them also. But I think big focus for Polygon CDK stack is essentially using our learnings from the ZKVM general purpose blockchain and kind of modularizing that stack into different configurations and allowing developers to essentially pick and choose whichever component they want to use for their own use case. And I think a big focus right now, and like for us, like we're constantly trying to solve problems, high level problems, with regards to app chains and interoperability, and fragmenting liquidity is a big issue that we're constantly talking about, and engineers are constantly researching, working with researchers to figure that out as well. So I would say like very big focus on interoperability. Okay, we have these CDK custom blockchains. How can we have them talk to each other in a seamless way? So there's going to be a lot of updates on that. Particularly February is going to be a bigger timeline, more important time when we have more time updates. And 2024 is where we want to essentially have these chains work seamlessly together, basically.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. Like, so really excited to see like in next 6 months, everyone have a new update for their new research. And also, I'll be glad if next year we came across each other again. Everyone will say, "Oh, it's 6 or 7 points rather than 3 points right now."
I'm gonna have my own chain,
Yeah.
Osman chain.
When token.
Yeah.
We can talk about it.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you again for Alair for inviting us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.